Hello everybody and welcome to Digium Live. I'm your host Brian Ferguson and I am extremely honored to be joined today by our newly appointed CTO at Digium, Matt Jordan. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So Matt, you've been with the company for a while, primarily involved in leading the Asterisk project. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how that background is really going to help as CTO?
Sure. So I graduated from both Michigan Tech with an undergraduate in computer engineering. Went to LSU, got my master's in electrical engineering. And when I came out of LSU, I originally started working for a software company doing 911 systems. And those 911 systems in that role, I was left less more on the engineering, writing software side than on the implementation side. And going onto customer sites and working very closely with customers for a number of years doing 911 systems. And that gave me a really good appreciation for how the software that was being developed impacted the customer. I got to see both the good and the bad of all the decisions that we made and how customers used our software.
Yeah.
Coming out of that, I then went and worked in the defense industry. So completely different industry,
Absolutely.
Very different constraints. Went from having very mission critical software running in 911 dispatch centers to mission critical software running in missile launchers. And so very similar kinds of pressure on the software, but very different development cycles, very different development in terms of the industry and how you built the software. As working in the missile defense industry, I was working for actually a very small company, only about 20 of us. It was an engineering contracting services firm. And we were subbed out usually to much larger companies doing enterprise kinds of things. And that gave me a really good appreciation for working for being in a small business and working with also very large businesses on very complex pieces of software.
Yeah.
And finally, when that wrapped up, I came to Digium. So again, completely different industry again,
Yeah,
right? So,
I would imagine.
Yep, 911 systems to missile defense to open source telecommunications.
Yeah.
And behind all of these things and all of my experience dealing with different kinds of software, different verticals, different sizes of companies, is this belief that there are good engineering practices that every software engineering company should be following. Good attention to detail and how we build and deliver our products and our software to open source users as well as the commercial customers that Digium has. But also that there are certain fundamental underpinnings in technology that we've used in all these different spaces. And I think that that's something that applies no matter what you're building.
So Matt, traditionally the role of CTO is really setting higher level technology strategy and vision for a company. And likewise, with Digium, you'll be doing that with the technological decisions and strategy for architecture. Can you tell us a little bit about your responsibilities and what is it about your role that impacts customers and Digium partners?
Sure. I think the best way to illustrate how my role in CTO will impact Digium's customers and partners is to look at what's happened over the past 2 years. Roughly 2 to 3 years ago, we started Asterisk 13, or really what became Asterisk 13. And what happened in the Asterisk open source project that led up to that release was a major effort to re-architect the core of Asterisk. And that was really done for a couple of different reasons, but probably the most important reason was to provide a new API in Asterisk that allowed things that build on top of Asterisk to pull the business logic out and to be able to extend and enhance it much more easily and with much more flexibility. That manifested itself actually in SwitchVox 6. And in SwitchVox 6, you have a brand new queuing engine that has enabled all sorts of cool new features to begin to be rolled out in future iterations of SwitchVox, such as in SwitchVox.2, we have some of the new queuing strategies and the ability to insert callers back into the queue.
Right.
And all of that is being done, and what allowed that to happen were the changes in Asterisk and in Asterisk 13. Now, I wasn't alone in doing that work. There were lots of other people here at Digium and in the open source community who helped facilitate that. But that sort of vision of unifying both the open source project along with Digium's commercial products is how I view my role as CTO.
Okay. All right, so in your career in Digium, you've been heavily involved with Asterisk, that we've kind of already talked about, and are a successful member of the Asterisk community. So how have you seen Asterisk really evolve over the last few years, especially when it regards to adoption?
With Asterisk, I think you see it evolving in a couple of different ways. Certainly with all the work that's occurred with Asterisk 12 and 13, there's been this major push to take Asterisk sort of to the next level. If you look at the lifetime of Asterisk, there was a period of time probably between the 1.3 1.4 to 1.8 days, where the focus was very much on building out the applications inside of Asterisk and sort of making it a very well-functioning PBX.
Right.
And then if you look at the time between 1.8 and 11, there were a lot of core features that were put back in, along with sort of some API improvements that happened. But starting with Asterisk 11 and moving on, we've been really focused on making Asterisk not just a PBX, although PBXs are great, we love PBXs, but on making Asterisk more flexible and able to be used as the engine that powers, say, Switchvox as our commercial product,
right.
But also making Asterisk be able to be plugged into pieces of a larger infrastructure more easily. So you see enhancements that have been gone in, such as in an Asterisk 13, where you have the ability to aggregate device state between Asterisk instances using the PJ-SIP stack. You've got new APIs via ARI that allows you to treat Asterisk just as a generic media application server. And that really is going to start enabling more adoption of Asterisk in a variety of different kinds of applications, places that you may not have traditionally thought of using Asterisk. And that's pretty exciting. I think that's a really cool thing where the Asterisk project is going.
All right, so why do you think that organizations are much more ready to move to open source projects like Asterisk today?
You know, that's a great question, because I think what we've seen over the past maybe 10 years that, it used to be when a company was evaluating software, somebody might propose open source and there might be some reticence amongst people. I think that's not the case anymore. I think open source is just the de facto way of doing things.
Right.
You look at, particularly probably in the web industry actually, where anybody who's building websites or building web properties, you're using open source technology by default. That's just what you use, right? Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, I think the telecommunications industry is still probably lagging a little bit behind that, but I think most of the world has just adopted open source as a way of building software. Open source as a distribution model, as a way of running a project, and also as a business model, right? And there's different ways to do that, but I think it's just no longer really even a point to be debated.
Yeah, so what are some of the other business applications or business tools that are available in open source that people need to know about besides phone systems?
Yeah, probably the place where we're seeing the most activity, and you can certainly pick plenty of others beyond this, but this is just a really good one, is in the infrastructure definition space. So, if you look at something like AWS, right, and cloud computing, right, there's lots of interesting open source projects that are either competitors to that or that sort of feed into that. Right. So OpenStack, for example, for virtualizing, for managing VMs, along with all the other different things that OpenStack can do. Containers with Docker, you have infrastructure definition with projects like Ansible and Chef and Puppet. There's just so much activity going on in that space. It's a very exciting time to be looking at anything in sort of that infrastructure, cloud computing, DevOps space.
All right, so changing gears a bit, there's still a large majority of companies out there that just, they'd rather use something that's commercially driven instead of open source. So, and we've seen in our industry, in the unified communication space, where, things are really moving quickly to the cloud. Do you see that trend kind of continuing, or do you see other trends that are really going to be more important in the near future?
Sure. One of the interesting things about commercial versus open source is that commercial does not necessarily imply there's no open source, right?
Sure.
Proprietary does, if you're just keeping the source code and you don't, and it's all completely baked in-house and you don't rely on any open source tools. But Digium is a commercial company. We have commercial products, and yet we also use open source in them, and we use open source technology ourselves in other places. I think with businesses wanting to adopt a commercial product versus going with a pure open source solution themselves is really a decision they're making about where they want to invest their time and money, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to either pay for a product that may be fully open source, may have open source components within it, or I'm going to invest my staff's time and energy into using open source by themselves, and they have to go put all those pieces together to create the product that I need. And so I think businesses choose a commercial solution not because of this fundamental tension between open source and commercial, but because they're looking to save time and money someplace, right, instead of just doing it themselves.
Right.
I think cloud is a natural extension of that. Right? That if I can save some time and money by purchasing something from a company like Digium, I can save possibly even more time and money by having them also host it, as opposed to require my IT staff to put it in the closet, hook up the networking, deal with issues and upgrades myself and all these other kinds of things. And so I think the move to a cloud-based service provider for telecommunications is just a natural evolution for a lot of businesses.
Sure. So with companies moving more and more to the cloud, where do you see Digium fit in that trend today?
Well, as companies move to the cloud, I think Digium is going to be right there with them. Certainly, we have our own cloud-based services offering with hosted Switchbox, which we've had now for a few years. We've recently introduced, I believe, also our SIP trunking offering, which will continue to expand and enhance. And in the future, I believe we'll have additional cloud-based offerings for our customers. It's going to be a major focus for Digium over the next several years.
Right. Okay, so to wrap up, I have to say that you're in an envious and fun position here as Chief Technology Officer at Digium. So for you, honestly, what are you most excited about in this new role?
Frankly, I'm excited to be working here. This is an awesome company. Absolutely love working here. You know, in the intro we talked about all the different places I've worked. This is by far the best place I've worked. I love working for Digium. I think we do some really cool things. Every day I get to come to work, and I get to work with really smart people. I get to work with really talented people who care passionately about the things that they do, and that's rare. That's not everywhere you get to find that. So the fact that Digium chose to make me CTO is just the best honor I could possibly receive.
All right, great. Well, Matt, I definitely appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us today. And thank everybody for joining us on Digium Live, and we'll see you on the next episode.